So hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jove webinar about how libraries can help support STEM research. I'm joined today by the University Librarian at Victoria University of Wellington, Trish Wilson. And yeah, we thank you very much for your attendance in today's session. We'll get started momentarily. I just would like to say, if anyone does have any questions, please do put them in the chat box and I can help address them and present them to Trish as we go through the session. But without much further ado, I will begin the introductions and we can begin the session. And please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and I'd be happy to address them. So my name is Patrick Ivory. I am the local account manager for Jove at Australia and New Zealand. And we're joined by Trish Wilson. She's the leading librarian at Victoria University of Wellington, who has an extensive experience as a librarian and information professional, having worked with a wide range of government agencies and universities in New Zealand and Australia, including the University of Melbourne and Victoria University of Wellington. So we have 3 questions that Trish will be helping answer us today. The first question, which I'd like to ask to you, Trish, is could you discuss how librarians can support researchers in addressing critical global challenges? Over to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks very much, Patrick, and welcome to everyone that's here listening. I hope that you find this of value. And it's first off, I just want to say it is great to actually be here and to talk about how us as librarians can actually add value to our researchers to address those critical global challenges, because I think it's a really important part of our role. And so I'm really quite happy to really, I suppose, promote that discussion and conversation as much as I can. So any questions, please do ask. More than happy to try and respond to them. In terms of the question that you just asked me, Patrick, I've been thinking about this a bit, and you know, academic and research librarians have always played quite a crucial role in supporting researchers and addressing these critical global challenges in various ways, and those are things such as providing access and promotion to relevant resources. So, you know, for as long as we can remember, librarians have curated and provided access to a wide range of resources, including scholarly publications, databases, more recently data sets and other materials. So it's I think that's really important in terms of them being relevant to the specific global challenges. And they can assist the researchers in locating and accessing the most up-to-date and authoritative information sources in the areas that they're tackling. And keeping up to date with those new resources and ensuring that the scholars are aware of them and that they're available is also really important to the role of the librarian, and highlighting the new ways that research is being presented. And really a great example is Jove itself, when you think about it, and the way that it presents the research studies, solving life sciences and life sciences difficult problems, you know, in different ways. And so it's up to us as librarians to make sure that our researchers are aware of this. So the other area that's something that we've traditionally always done in terms of this would be our literature review and those traditional research support services. And depending on what the brief the librarian is, they can either collaborate and advise researchers or their research assistants in terms of conducting these comprehensive literature reviews or systematic reviews. Likewise, undertaking searches on subject areas and the databases best suited for their endeavours. And of course, providing the tools and resources for citation management. So all of these help our researchers stay up to date and with the latest developments, really, and you know, in their field, and ensure that they build on their existing knowledge. And that's globally as well, of course. And I'm sure as many of the audience will know that there are far more opportunities that for libraries to support researchers, and many of us do these days in terms of addressing those global challenges. So such as, for example, librarians can offer and do offer training and workshops and self-help guides and information resources, in terms of how to effectively use the resources so that the researchers can develop their necessary skills, which is something we've traditionally done as well, to be fair. And that's so important in terms of synthesizing and evaluating the information from the different sources to conduct comprehensive, well-informed research. And also, we know that research is becoming increasingly data-driven, and librarians are providing guidance and support a lot more in terms of data management, curation, and preservation practices. And I know, for example, in Australia, perhaps less so here, but not in New Zealand, Aotearoa, where I am. Having research data management advice and librarians to provide that sort of support is very important as well. And so there are, and in some cases, the library is responsible for the research data management platform for the institution. And if they're not, then they're advising. And on an individual level, certainly can help with the organising, describing, and making their research data findable for the institution. And so that's really important. So it's all around that reuse, promoting open science, and enabling future research. And that sort of leads quite nicely into open access and scholarly communications. Librarians can promote and support open access initiatives, and this has become increasingly important. And the accessibility and visibility and the reach of our research findings related to global challenges using open access as a way is really important. And so in many cases, the library will be responsible to undertake this and to provide scholarly advice for our academics to decide which journal to first place it in, also to consider, what type of research open access, is the most appropriate, and to educate as well, because from my experience, at least when it comes to open access, many of our researchers sometimes think that to make a research publication, it needs to be to make it open, then you need to pay an article processing charge. Well, we know as librarians that is not the case. And there is self-archiving options, and many of the libraries, I'm sure that the audience are working in, will have institutional repositories for that very reason, to enable research outputs to be made open access. So we have quite a strong role to play there. And it's really important with those global challenges, because it means that it's not just the people or the institutions, shall I say, that can afford to pay the subscriptions where the research is behind paywalls to actually access it. And so this really is a good way for us to be able to help to solve and to really provide reach for the research that the university or the institution is actually is producing, to go into the hands of for others, such as policymakers, or perhaps in institutions where they can't afford to have a subscription to a particular journal, to still get access to this material that will make a difference to solving some of these global challenges. We all know that this can be done, and I think that over the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, that became clear that if there's a will, and it can make a difference to having that quickly available to many. So that, I think, is a really important thing for us. And then more broadly, as I said, around that scholarly publishing, we offer advice around author rights, alternative publishing models such as open access, ensuring that the research outputs are really widely disseminated, and that's so important. So the other thing that I think we can do when it comes to global challenges, and that is linking our researchers in terms of interdisciplinary approaches, because often that's what is required, is an interdisciplinary collaborative approach to try and think about these global challenges. And librarians are in a great place to do that and facilitate these collaborations and partnerships, both between researchers from different disciplines in their institutions and sectors. But also I think it is, in terms of sectors, it's by relevant resources or looking at the expertise and networking opportunities. And we have ways of doing this, for example, using tools that librarians have at their disposal and have expert searching ability to identify individuals and institutions working in the same area that could be potential collaborators. And this is really important and could save time and be way more effective for some of our researchers. And then librarians can also assist researchers, of course, and measuring and demonstrating that visibility, reach, and impact of their research, both within academia and beyond. And this is done in a range of ways using bibliometric and altmetric tools to help them understand whether their research is finding reach with the relevant stakeholders, and also to contribute to addressing those global challenges effectively. Of course, librarians can offer strategies for enhancing this potential as well. So that's sort of what I'm thinking in terms of some of the ways in which we can partner with our researchers. I think by leveraging our expertise in research support, scholarly communication and information management, librarians are playing a vital role in empowering researchers to tackle those critical global challenges more effectively and efficiently. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Trish. I found that very informative. Particularly liked your comments about open access and institutional repositories that universities can provide. So thank you for that. I don't see any questions in the chat box. So if anyone does have anything they would like to add, just a comment or a question, please do comment and we would be happy to address those. But yeah, I found that very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is about collaboration. So collaboration between libraries and researchers is crucial for advancing research. What are some key strategies for fostering a dynamic partnership between libraries and researchers to support research?
Thanks, Patrick. Well, fostering a dynamic partnership between libraries and research is essential, really, in advancing research and promoting knowledge creation. And these are just some of my thoughts around key strategies that might be able to help establish and strengthen these collaborations. So, I mean, obviously, establishing strong relationships and being known to researchers, that's our librarians, is really, really important in terms of contributing to their success along the way. And there's different ways we can achieve this. Liaison programs, quite obviously, which is a well-established sort of way in which libraries will have liaison programs where librarians are assigned to specific academic disciplines or departments or research groups. They may come, the role title could be different. It might be subject librarian, it could be liaison librarian, but that's pretty much, it's a traditional sort of model, but it does seem to work well. These liaisons act in this dedicated point of contact and build those relationships for our researchers, understanding their research areas and providing those tailored sort of customised services where needed, and also understanding the resources that are probably the most appropriate for them. So I think that's an obvious one in terms of collaborations. There's also the other model, of course, of an embedded librarian within either a research team or maybe a department or school, and working closely with the researchers to understand their specific information needs and providing that tailored support. Of course, with all of these types of I suppose models, is about how we can make them sustainable and scalable. So that's just something to add in there, I guess. But with this approach, it sort of facilitates that seamless integration with the library services for the research workflow, and it fosters a collaborative environment. I mean, I think we all know that if you are sitting in a room with your colleagues, if you're in an open plan office, for example, then the likelihood of connecting and having conversations that weren't necessarily planned is much more likely, and can sometimes be much quicker in terms of getting some work done. So it's no different in that respect if you have librarians embedded in the area. But regardless of whether you formally are embedded, being present, I think, and proactively offering support to researchers in their place can be a really good strategy for developing those collaborations. And it goes without saying, of course, that regular communication channels, such as meetings, newsletters, surveys, going to different lectures and presentations and seminars that are offered for your area or discipline is also another really good way. And also being on advisory boards or relevant committees are important ways to connect and offer opportunities to foster that strong partnership and understanding. I think that these have two-way benefits, because it helps the library to stay informed about the evolving needs and challenges that are faced by the researchers, and adapting and improving our services and resources to better support their endeavours. But it's also an opportunity for researchers to understand the contribution that libraries and librarians can make, and who we are and how we can be accessed, or where to go for the support when they need it. So I think that those are all really important things. And the libraries and librarians being actively involved and engaging with researchers in the development and evaluation of the library services is another way as well. And you can do that in quite a different, in different approaches. But if we're actively engaging to find out, what services, resources, collections the researchers need to align with their needs is really important. And this collaborative approach will help the library's offerings in terms of aligning with those evolving needs. So I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of that. And it could be about, being on wider committees as well, such as faculty research committees, or like myself on the University Research Committee. These really help, because it helps to understand the research community and for them to be able to connect and know what we can offer. I think being a strong part of that wider institutions' research initiatives and demonstrating how we can contribute to those priorities to build the knowledge, and to build their knowledge on what we can do in terms of our skills is actually really quite important, and to recognise that we are able to help to advance their research endeavours. So, for example, here in Aotearoa, we have the Performance-Based Research Fund, known as the PBRF, and it's a mechanism that assesses the tertiary institution's research performance, and it determines government funding, similar to other models in other countries, such as Australia's ERA. And it's designed to increase the quality of research by encouraging and rewarding excellent research and degree granting organisations. So it's the outcomes of this really determine the government's research funding, and librarians can and do contribute to preparing for these different rounds. it's have a really important part to play, and it's strategically important as well. So these rounds in New Zealand have there's been a number. There's one coming up in 2026 as well, and so we're involved right from the get-go in terms of that as we prepare for the next submission. So another strategy is also jointly hosting events and workshops, both with other research-focused groups in the institution to collaborate and to organise events and workshops, training sessions and scholarly communications, that type of thing. You know, anything that's of use in terms of our researchers, in terms of tools that are relevant or topics that are relevant for our researchers. So that might be data management. It could be research reach and visibility and impact. It could be scholarly communication, emerging technologies. The list goes on, and we can do that on our own, or we can do that together, and it's probably going to be a more powerful, holistic approach. And this joint initiative fosters an exchange, and it strengthens connections between groups and researchers. There's quite a few examples I could give you here at Te Herenga Waka. Like during Open Access Week, we actively are involved with the program there, and as are many of our colleagues across the university, and we invite some of our researchers to speak or be on panels and that type of thing, to share their knowledge and thoughts on it. There's Research Bazaar, ResBaz, for those who may know of it, which is a worldwide festival promoting digital literacy, which is really quite important in this modern day research. And we collaborate really closely with our colleagues at the University of Auckland and offer a range of relevant events and workshops collaboratively. And it's really good because it brings not only people from our institution together, but also from other institutions. And I don't think we should forget that, you know, this doesn't need to just be purely within our own institution. So as research becomes more increasingly data-driven as well, libraries can also play a vital role in providing those research data management services, which I've already talked about a little bit, to be fair. And it's a valuable way to add I guess, the potential to add value to the research ecosystem. And that might be guidance in terms of data curation, preservation, sharing, compliance with data policies and funding requirements, enabling researchers to effectively manage and leverage their data. So there's so much that actually comes quite naturally to us. And while we might need to sidestep from our traditional bounds, it's quite within our remit and skills and experience. And so that is why I think a lot of libraries have taken on this challenge to provide these services. And as I've mentioned, you know, librarians can assist with navigating the changing landscape of the scholarly communication sort of landscape, which is huge and it keeps changing all the time, as we know, and providing advice on open access and authors' rights and alternative dissemination channels. So, you know, this support is really important to really try and increase that visibility and impact of our researchers' work. Then finally, if there's also opportunities for libraries to offer collaborative spaces and research commons where researchers can work or interact and engage and can foster interdisciplinary collaboration and knowledge sharing, that sense of community. We haven't done that here at Te Herenga Waka, but I'm very proud of some work that one of our research services librarians has been very involved in, which is setting up the Rainbow Research Network here, and bringing a number of our Rainbow researchers together to talk about their research, and doing that sometimes in the library. And so there is a place for us to play in this, and it doesn't necessarily need to be in a physical space. It can well be in a virtual online space or in a community of practice. So I think by actively fostering a dynamic partnership between libraries and researchers, both can leverage off their respective strengths and expertise, resulting in more impactful research, enhanced knowledge creation, and a better alignment between library services and the needs of the research community. That's me.
Oh, thank you, Trish. I found that very informative as well. Yeah, some really great collaboration strategies that are happening at VUW and across the region. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Still, yeah, no questions from the chat box. So if anyone has any comments, please feel free to put your hand up. But finally, on to our third and final question for this webinar. It's about your work at the Te Heranga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington Library, and it's a wonderful example of how transforming the library teams and structure can create a culture of ambitious research for transformative impact. Could you share how the restructuring of your library has supported these research efforts? Yeah, curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Patrick. I guess before I start, I do want to acknowledge that there's probably a lot of people that are on this webinar as well that have got some really great structures and you know, perhaps quite aware of some of the different changes that are possible. But it is quite nice to be able to share the experience of Te Reinga Waka, Te Pātaka Kōrero, the Victoria University of Wellington Library's experience in terms of the undergoing significant transformations in recent years to try and support that culture of ambitious research and to enhance its impact. Because that's really what is something Te Reinga Waka has been really striving to do. And we've been a part of this, and we needed to align our priorities and resources and services to support that. So it started, you know, it's undergone change in terms of structure in a range of ways incrementally over many years. And so the emphasis is always, I think there's always been an emphasis on supporting research, but it's more so highlighted, I would say, in the last 10 or 15 years at least. And as I've sort of mentioned earlier, there's some less traditional, shall we say, services that we're now offering that relate to this. So when I arrived at Te Reinga Waka in late 2011, so that's a good 13 years ago, isn't it? If I can do my counting right, might be more. Anyway, 12? Anyway, 12. Anyway, there was a major organisational change in the library, and that's how I sort of arrived, was being appointed as one of two newly created academic support manager roles, which were responsible for the subject librarian team. Now, each of us was given a portfolio to lead for the library. One was learning and teaching, and one was research. Now, this was the beginning of explicitly recognising the important role the library had to support the university's research efforts. And so, you know, I think that was really important. And the library research support strategy was formed from that. It was my colleague actually at the time, Lucy Lang, who was responsible for that portfolio. And then I think that was just a good, I think it was recognised as it was required. And at that time, there was a heightened focus on the next round of PBRF, which I talked about. And the library was taking responsibility for verifying all of the researchers' nominated research outputs. So that's what was going to be in their evidence portfolios that would be submitted. Now, this was a mammoth task, and it required a whole of library approach. So this was completely different work to what any of the library staff had done in the past or ever been involved with before. And it was really important to be able to articulate why this was strategically important for both the library and the university. The efforts were really recognised, and it was a positive outcome for the university as well. Now, I think that made us realise that, you know, our support for research, we needed to start thinking about how we could really, you know, maybe heighten that, shall we say. So this really set the scene for us to consider what services an academic library ought to focus on to stay relevant and to support the university's strategic goals and priorities. And while we were supporting our researchers in a range of ways already, of course, we knew we needed to do more. So we had no additional funding, which of course is often the case. We had to really look at where we would, if we wanted new roles, how this would work. So with no additional funding for new roles, to increase the capacity, it was necessary for us to refocus some roles. And as is often the case in academic libraries, this was predominantly our subject librarian team. Initially, there was one dedicated subject librarian who was allocated to research support. Now, I can't quite remember the year that this happened, a few years later maybe. And then we also, as a part of her role, it was about building capability to support our researchers within the library and the subject librarian team. So, of course, many of our subject librarians were already capable and skilled to do this, you know, and to work in this area. But it's also a matter of figuring out, you know, what wouldn't be done to incorporate this work, because you can't just load extra stuff on. We all know that, and expect to have positive outcomes necessarily at the end. So we had to consider what we stopped doing. And so, for example, the traditional library reference desk was disbanded and a tiered service model was implemented. And so a change in focus was really important, and we changed some of the role descriptions to better describe what the functions and activities would be with these strategic priorities. So then, as a part of a realignment, I think it was in 2017, new roles in a team of dedicated, new roles and a team were dedicated to supporting research and scholarly communication. And this was formed as the Library Research Services team. So the intention was to complement the one-to-one research support that our subject librarians continue to offer with comprehensive support to our researchers. So the idea was that, you know, and it still is the case at Te Reinga Waka, that our subject librarians are responsible for that one-to-one support for our researchers, and then the rest of the team, the research services librarians, may support the wider initiatives. So initially, the team was small. It was just one digital research coordinator who was responsible for our institutional repositories, such as the open access repository and advising on digitisation and managing our OJS platform, for example. And this was a role that existed but was slightly refocused, and then the reporting lines changed. And then there were the two research services librarians, of which were new roles. There was the subject librarian role that had the research focus, but these were two new roles. And the focus was to develop and maintain that sustainable and relevant research support service for our university leaders and the scholarly community in line with those library strategies and priorities. So not so much the one-to-one. So yeah, so that was all like quite good, and all of the teams contribute to that pan-university initiative in collaboration with the University Research Support Services. So, for example, with the implementation of our open access repository, we collaborated with the research office as it integrates with our symplectic elements, which is our research information management system, and developing our OA policies and guidelines, which we are responsible for. So, that's an example where we've done that. In addition, there's the research services manager for the first time, who was working at a strategic level across the library and the university, which was the acknowledgement of the importance of the research in terms of the libraries supporting the university's research success. So in 2021, we had another change. So the organisation structure became flatter. So we've had quite a lot of changes, but this is not unusual for a university library, I'm sure. And so this the structure became flatter, which meant that the associate director positions were disestablished, of which I was one, and a deputy university librarian role was created instead. And the managers reported directly to the university librarian. So this had the research services manager and the team reporting through to the deputy university librarian, which was me. And this change did signal the importance of research services in the library, and additional resources were also allocated to the team. So we had an additional digital research services librarian and research services librarian also added. So that was 5 plus the manager. Now, this was a successful model, and I think it saw closer working relationships with our digital research services librarians and our research services librarians. However, the manager for research services position became vacant. And not long after that, in 2023, the library needed to respond to the university's need to achieve financial sustainability. So after some deliberations, we have decided, or I decided to disperse the research services team. So what has happened instead is we've created an academic engagement team that has the research services librarians and the subject librarians reporting into a manager. And then the digital research librarians have moved to our systems and integration development team. So they've got very strong synergies in these teams. And the reality is that all of the teams contribute to the research support. While we probably wouldn't have made that decision under different circumstances, the capacity hasn't been diluted, and I think that's really important. And I do think that acknowledgement and understanding of the role that the library plays in supporting research services is sufficiently embedded for this not to really impact on our contribution. In the end, I don't think that organisation structure needs to determine the quality of the service that we offer in this sort of space, and I don't believe that it will. There's always more work to be done, and we need to be prepared to change our focus and structure to respond to these needs and priorities of the university. And I think that, we're really well regarded for our contributions in the research support space across the university, and we can meaningfully work with our researchers to foster and culture impactful and transformative research. So that's it from me. So I hope that's been of some use to people.
Thank you, Trish. I think, yeah, that was very useful and some very well thought out discussions. We do have one question from Heather Monroe Allison. Well, it's just a comment more so, but she's said she's keen to hear the kinds of unique STEM research outputs people have encountered. So that's, yeah, for you, Trish, or for any other one in the audience to help answer that. But yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Heather. It was interesting. I said to Patrick at the beginning that that the actual the questions and my responses weren't going to be so directed at the STEM sort of aspects of it, because I think that in some ways it feels that that perhaps in the STEM area it's stronger in terms of than in some of the other disciplines, shall we say. However, you know, in terms of those unique research outputs, it's quite challenging, I think, and I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer the question, but I do know that there are some challenges around big data and how that's managed, and that type of thing, and those unique outputs that there are. What I would say is that STEM does have unique outputs, and there's no doubt about it, but there's other disciplines that do as well. And how do you manage all of those, you know, non-traditional research outputs? So I'd be really keen if there was anyone in the audience that might actually be able to provide a more fulsome response to Heather's question.
Yeah, there's nothing currently, but I say we um, keep the chat box open for the next 5 or so minutes. And yeah, anyone wants to respond, either verbally or if they want to write their response, I'd be happy to have the input. But thank you, Heather, for that question. I'd be interested to know the responses myself as well.
I'd be interested to hear if there's anything that that I've sort of said that has particularly resonated or your question, or that might be different in your own institution, or that I missed that you might want to share through the chat as well. That could be quite helpful for some of the for the other participants. It's pretty quiet bunch.
Um, yeah, so
That's all right.
I'll say we go to a quarter to the hour, and wait for any potential follow-up questions that there may be. But other than that, we will have the recording available shortly after the session. And if there's any follow-up questions, yeah, please feel free to address them to myself and we can help respond to those.
Yeah, and of course I'm more than happy to if people want to contact me about anything, then I'm more than happy to try and respond in a way that's going to be of use. I'm always happy to have conversations about how we can improve our support and services to our researchers, because it's something that I think is strategically important for all of us. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your attendance in today's webinar. I hope you found it as informative as everyone else has. We just had one question from Jennifer to everyone saying, Trish, did the library staff accept all of your changes? Which is an interesting question.
Well, it's always a difficult time, isn't it? When you change is never easy, and so I think it was a very difficult time for people. But on the whole, I hope that people did accept the changes. That's the sense that I get. I mean, it's never It's never easy when it's something that you have to do in response to a wider challenge, shall we say. And so I think we are in a period now of consolidating, and it's probably better to ask, to be honest, Jennifer, you'd need to ask my colleagues and staff if that was the case. But generally, I think we're in good heart. I think that we're feeling like we can move forward, knowing what the future holds for us, and that we are now in a position to really consolidate and probably focus on what matters, which is really hard to do when you're going through change and not really knowing and what the outcome is, and there's so much uncertainty. So I work with incredible colleagues, and are very committed, and so regardless of their views, they would still have and still do continue to make sure that they're providing excellent support to our university community. And so I can't really ask for more than that. Really, yeah. So that's thanks for that question. It's a good question.
Another question from Heather. I'll read it out. It says, thanks, Trish. Your comments on having a flatter structure were interesting at a time when most, or all, in parentheses, universities are likely looking at reduced staff downsizing, staff/downsizing. Good to remember how adaptable libraries have been and can be. Thumbs up.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Yeah, it was certainly, it's quite an unusual model in the respect of not having associate directors and just one deputy, so to speak. But our managers, there's of which I think, oh gosh, should remember, I think there's 6 now. There was 7, and the deputy then. They report through to the university librarian, and that's our library leadership team. And actually, it works really well. I think it works really well, and I think wherever you can have a flatter structure, it probably just allows for less bureaucracy, and communication becomes a lot easier within the organisation. So I think it's been a positive outcome. Yeah. So you're right. Most universities are looking at reduced staffing, and certainly that's the case here at Te Reinga Waka. Yeah, I think we've probably 25%, about 20 to 25% less staff in the last 5 years. So we've got about 82 staff now.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's also my opinion that a flatter structure is good. Being able to have that open office sort of space mentality to talk to people in different positions does foster collaboration and idea growth. So yeah, thank you for that comment, Heather, and your response, Trish. I think that can be applied to multiple settings, but particularly in the library as well. Yeah. I'll wait perhaps just a few more minutes. And yeah, all these comments and questions are appreciated.
So Patrick, with your role, do you find that you work directly with, or do you see collaboration between the researchers and librarians?
Yes, we do. So we really want, the librarians to help promote particularly our education materials to academic staff. So having engagement through the library to basically make use of the teaching resources is very essential. And yeah, can help the learning and teaching efforts from the resources that Jove provides in STEM. More from a research point of view, we think having our research discoverable, the library plays a very crucial role in that. So things through the discovery layer and so on is quite essential. So making sure that, these things are well informed, and yeah, the library is able to help promote and keep their systems updated, yeah, is very essential. And when things work together, it's great. And we find the research, yeah, gets to the people who are in need of that type of, yeah, video journal that Jove can provide. Yeah, we love to run sessions with any institute as well. So working with the libraries, is always great to start.
Well, I'm sure that people are wanting to get to the next meetings, depending where you are, of course. Yeah, that's one thing we don't know, actually, do we? Where everyone's from. Wherever it is, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, thank you so much. I just saw that Jennifer, you have your hand up, but was that perhaps from the question asked before? I can see attendees from South Korea, the Philippines, and Australia as well. So thank you everyone for your fairly wide involvement in today's session. I think it's gone quite well. And yeah, sorry, Jennifer, I'll just allow you to talk if that's what you're interested. Sorry, if there's anything you'd like to add, please feel free.
I was just going to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
For organising this session today.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for your engagement.
And yeah, thank you everyone else. I will be sharing the recording and I'll finish the session shortly. So thank you very much. And thank you, Trish, particularly for your insight and your very detailed and interesting responses to all the questions that we had.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me. And thank you for all the people that attended. I hope it's been of value.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I will now end the session and thank you. Goodbye.